So after you've kind of established why, the next is, so how do you actually get things done? How do you actually coordinate? How do those things happen? And in a traditional structure, it's all about, okay, what's my my organizational structure and processes, right? So planning, who reports to whom, how am I distributing decision rights, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't want to say those things are unimportant. We do need to have reporting lines, or most people do. I mean, there are companies like Zappos that's trying to holacracy where there aren't boxes and lines. We still have boxes and lines. We got a lot more people in a lot more countries than they do. So, but what I think people miss is that even more important than boxes and lines and process is how people interact. And most executives, most managers, most leaders don't think that is part of their job description, right? Which is, how do people interact? What's the tone and tenor of interaction? Are they positive? Are they negative? Is the organization passive aggressive? Is it not? All of that set of stuff is more important than the boxes and lines in the process in terms of getting organizations to run well. And you know what? It's messy and it's emotional because you're talking about culture, you're talking about personalities, you're talking about conflict. And the simple thing we did in Management 1.0 is we assumed it all away. People are rational. We don't have to worry about that. We have boxes and lines, and we have decision rights, and they're articulated, and we have processes, capital budgeting and planning. Let's not worry about all that messy stuff. We all know that people are messy and emotional, and so as a leader, how do you set culture? How do you set tone? How do you make sure the right ideas come forward is a critical part of what you need to do as a leader and as a manager, right? And I'm just gonna pick a couple snippets here. If you're interested in it, there's more in it in the book. So 2 observations, at least for Red Hat. One is, we talk a lot about meritocracy, and a lot of companies want to say meritocracy, best ideas win. But you scratch your idea on that, who decides if it's the best idea? And if the person who decides it's the best idea, aren't you really saying it's whatever they think is the best idea wins? Is that really meritocracy? At Red Hat, we actually took a cue from open source. So we're an open source company and the whole open source movement. And what we find over time is that relying on people's reputations is a great proxy for making sure best ideas win. So, in all honesty, I really should say on this is, people who over time have had great ideas, have contributed a lot, and have built their reputations are listened to, frankly, more than others. And people build their reputation over time through contribution. There has been a lot written around on the social consumer side about the reputation economy, et cetera. That applies in companies as well. And so recognizing and figuring out who are the thought leaders, who are the people who consistently have great ideas, and tapping them is extremely important. And look, we all know who they are, and they don't necessarily correlate with boxes and lines. Years ago, back when I was at BCG, when we did change management stuff, we used to talk about this term, thermometers versus thermostats. And the concept is thermometers reflect the temperature, thermostats set the temperature. And if you want change to happen, you need to get the thermostats to change. And generally, if you go, you do some interviews, you find out who the thought leaders are. And again, they may be individual contributors. They don't necessarily correlate to where you are in the organization, but those are the people to get on board. We all need to leverage our thermostats, right? The thermometers will come along. Who are the thermostats? How do you engage them? How do you involve them to step up and be leaders? Because a lot of those people are leaders among their peers, but have no desire to be leaders, in an organizational, hierarchical, manage people sense. And how you think about leveraging that is really important.